Devere. He is a congregant of Temple Emanu-El, which is where we are right now. We're in Temple Emanu-El's Weinberg. And he is a neurologist. And my capstone is on Parkinson's disease, so I think that you'll be a very good source of information. And besides, I like you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I look forward to talking to you.
So, my first question is, what is neurology and why did you choose it?
It's a good question. So neurology is a problem, neurology is an area of medicine. So we're doctors and we deal with parts of the brain and the nerves and the muscles. So everywhere from the brain all the way down to the arms and legs is part of neurology. And I chose it because I thought it was a really interesting area of medicine, and there's a lot of neat things that we can kind of help figure out, diagnose, and there's a lot of treatments for different problems with the brain and the nerves and the arms and the muscles and stuff.
Yes. Now, second question. What causes Parkinson's?
So good question. So Parkinson's is a problem with a small part of the brain called the substantia nigra, and it stops working. And that little part of the brain is really important for especially movement. And we don't know exactly why it stops working in a lot of people.
Yes. Some of my classmates think that Parkinson's disease is a person that just shakes a lot. I know that is definitely not true. What are the other symptoms of Parkinson's disease that makes it noticeable?
Right. So Parkinson's is a problem that a lot of people have, and there's probably 4 main parts of Parkinson's that some people have all of it and some people have some of it. So it can cause, in a lot of people, it can cause shaking, we call tremor. And usually the tremor in Parkinson's is when the hand is in the lap, it'll shake like this. But not everybody has shaking. The other thing it can often cause is trouble walking. Another feature is the arms and the legs, the muscles can get stiff. And then the 4th feature, so tremor, trouble walking, stiffness, movements can be slow. So the speed of moving your arms and your legs can be slower in Parkinson's. So a lot of people with Parkinson's have tremor or shaking, but not everybody. There are some people who have slow movements and trouble walking, but they don't have any shaking.
Yes. So, can kids get Parkinson's? How old is your youngest Parkinson's patient?
So, kids do not typically get Parkinson's. It's very, very rare to have Parkinson's under the age of 20. Most patients are older. The youngest patient I've ever seen is probably someone around age 30 to 35 with Parkinson's. There's a lot of press about somebody named Michael J. Fox. And Michael J. Fox, you may or may not have heard of. He used to be and is actually a famous movie star. And he developed Parkinson's, I think in his late 20s. But that's very, very unusual. So kids don't get it though. Kids do not get Parkinson's.
Okay. What is the average age Parkinson's disease ordinarily strikes though?
So probably the average age is 60. But you can be younger and older, so 50s and 60s, but there's people who are in their 70s, 80s, and there's people in their 30s and 40s who can get it, but the average is probably around 60.
Okay. What is the common drug used for Parkinson's disease?
So the most common
how
drug.
does it help?
So how does it help? So the most common drug is one that's been around for a long time, probably 50 years. There's a drug called levodopa, or some people might just call it dopa. And what it does is it replaces the small part of the brain that stops working. It replaces the protein that part of the brain used to make.
And the protein is called dopamine, right?
So the protein is called dopamine, correct. And the levodopa gets converted to dopamine, and it helps replace what wasn't there.
Yes. Okay. Do you have Parkinson's patients that opt for brain surgery?
I do. So there's a lot of good treatments for Parkinson's with medicines that we use. So a lot of the medicines like the levodopa and other medicines can help with replacing the parts of the brain that aren't working properly. For patients who have tried these medicines, some of them are able to get a surgery. Not all, but we do have some patients. So it's called deep brain stimulation is the most common one. There's some other ones, but the deep brain stimulation surgery, they put a small stimulator, which is a box about this big, and it goes under the skin, usually one on each side, and it's got a little tiny battery in it, and there's a wire that's put under the skin in the operating room. It goes into the brain, and then it puts the wire right in the part of the brain that's not working. So we have some patients that do well with that kind of surgery.
Mm-hmm. So, have you performed brain surgery, and what does it involve?
So I haven't performed brain surgery, but I've seen brain surgery. I'm a neurologist, and there's different doctors called neurosurgeons. And so the neurosurgeons, they're the ones that do the surgery. So surgery, depending on what kind of surgery they're doing, patients brought into an operating room, which is a special room, and they usually give them some really good numbing medicine. Often the patients are put to sleep, and they have to, depending on what they're doing, they have to do surgery with special instruments, and they have very fancy cameras to see what they're doing because it's very small areas. You don't want to have big surgery in the brain. You want to have small surgeries because brain's very delicate.
Yes. Okay. Now, what are some new ideas for cures for Parkinson's disease?
So there's a lot of research that's being done right now in trying to solve the problem of Parkinson's. Most of the medicines that we have are designed to help replace the part of the brain that's not working properly. But even when they do that, the brain can still have problems over time where more of the nerves stop working. So a lot of the research is trying to figure out how do we prevent the nerves from dying. And they're looking at parts of the cells called genes. The gene is, everyone has genes. You usually get some genes from your mom, some from your dad.
Yes, I've heard about
You've heard about genes. So they're trying to focus a lot of research on trying to figure out where the problem is, possibly in the genes, to prevent it from dying in the first place.
Yes. So, do cholesterol drugs contribute to Parkinson's disease?
No, right now we don't think that cholesterol drugs are likely causing any problems with Parkinson's.
Okay. Can you figure out if somebody has Parkinson's disease just by looking at them?
So the way we diagnose Parkinson's is, as a neurologist, is by looking at people and then often doing tests. So not always, but most of the time, if I look at someone carefully as a neurologist, I can see signs of Parkinson's, so yes. And then once we think it might be Parkinson's, depending on the situation, we may order pictures of the brain, we may do MRIs, we may do blood work and other testing. So we do usually have an idea just by looking.
Yes, okay. So, and finally, how does Parkinson's differ from other neurological diseases like MS?
So MS stands for multiple sclerosis, so that's a different problem with the brain than Parkinson's. So it differs because each disease affects a different part of the brain. So Parkinson's is a very tiny area of the brain that does a lot with those special movements we talked about. So people with Parkinson's get slow movements, they might get tremor, they might get trouble walking. People with multiple sclerosis might get numbness on one side, they may get problems with their vision, they may get trouble walking, but it looks different. So we usually can tell when we see somebody, and that's why people go to a neurologist to kind of help figure out, could they have Parkinson's, could they have multiple sclerosis, could they have nothing, maybe they're just fine. So a lot of people we see have a little bit of a tremor in their hands, but most of the people we see who have tremor, they don't have Parkinson's. It's a different kind of tremor.
Okay, so thank you for taking out your time of being on call and taking care of patients, for giving me all of this wonderful information, and you have been a really good interviewee.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm going to say one last thing just for everybody out there. So, over a lifetime, about 1 out of 100 people can get Parkinson's. So we all need to be aware of it and be considerate of Parkinson's. And we're learning a lot more. So thank you so much for doing your project on this. I think it's going to teach people a lot about something that's actually very common.
Yes.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.